Hello and welcome to episode 133 of the Book Binge. This week we're doing a top 10 list, a top 10 list that is one of three videos in some sense, because I'm ranking 10 classics that I most want to read. I say this is one of three because over the course of the rest of 2024, I anticipate that I'll probably end up doing another 2 to 3 of these videos, depending on how things go. I have 3 of them already noted and organized, so I could technically record all 3 right now if I wanted to. But first I want to talk about this first one, generally the classics that I want to get to the soonest. Obviously this isn't, definitive. There's a heck of a lot more that isn't on this list that otherwise would be, because they're on different versions of this list, and there's a couple sort of halfway cheating answers, but for the most part, these are the ones that I have the most genuine interest in the immediacy. Without further ado, I want to talk about one honorable mention before we get started on the actual top 10, and it's actually sitting right back there on that little pedestal back there, Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. By this point, I've already been reading it for a little while. In fact, I'm nearly halfway through, so it is sort of halfway cheating, like I said, to include it on this list because, I've already started it. Before I started reading it, before I decided to actually join in on the read along, it was a little bit higher up on this list and I had to move some things around. But yeah, that one I joined on a whim. I'm working my way through it very slowly. I haven't actually touched it in a little while because of other reading obligations, but I do want to get to it very soon, hopefully to be done before I start Infinite Jest later this year. That would be nice. But otherwise, let's start off with number 10. The first book in this collection that I have by Jack London, The Call of the Wild. I did read The Sea Wolf. Oh man, what was it? About a little under a year ago at this point. Was it 2 years ago? When did I read The Sea Wolf? I think it was May 2023 when I read The Sea Wolf. That was my first London. I don't think it was the best choice. The Call of the Wild, I think, will probably be my next London that I try, at least where the novella/novel department is concerned. It's very small, very short. It's apparently quite sweet. A lot of people really like it, and it might be, like I said, a better choice than The Sea Wolf was. So I do want to get to The Call of the Wild at some point. Number 9 on this list is one that I've had my eye on for a long time. Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. This one has been on my bucket list at least since 6th grade, so kind of a somewhat similar situation to Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, which I had my eye on at least since 4th grade. Even reading a couple pages at one point or another. It's like, well, I'm not actually reading this now, but I do want to read it someday. That's the goal, is to read that book. That's how Les Mis was. Ivanhoe has kind of had some place on that kind of list for me as well. I had a huge medieval/middle ages history phase back at the time in middle school, and this was the book I wanted to read because it was one that we happened to own. So it's one that I really want to get to and that I really want to actually try now, kind of in that bucket list way. Maybe I'll love it just as much as I loved Les Mis. Who knows? Number 8 on the list is a much more beat up mass market paperback. This is The Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. I've only read in full one Verne book, but I have started multiple other Verne books at one point or another, including Journey to the Center of the Earth. But I think after how much I enjoyed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which I did review on this channel, I have a video up for that. This one, I've been told, is very satisfying knowing Captain Nemo's character. It is, in some sense, in the same continuity, sort of a sequel to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea in some sense. Or maybe it's not a sequel, maybe it's a prequel, I forget. Either way, this book apparently involves that character and involves some of those storylines, and I just really am interested in reading this. I'm interested in reading more Verne in general, so maybe this will be the next one I try, since I really liked 20,000 Leagues as much as I did. Otherwise, next up, we're going into very different territory, where that one was, we've touched on, was Jack London American? I don't even know if he was an American author or not. So yes, apparently Jack London was an American writer. Then we went to Sir Walter Scott, which was English. Then we went to French for The Mysterious Island. Now we're heading into Russian territory with Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is probably one of my most anticipated authors, just generally speaking, one that I really want to try in terms of material and philosophical material and just broadly the kind of things, the topics, the themes, whatever that Dostoevsky explores, I think that he'll be a big hit with me. I hope so at the very least, and I do definitely want to give him a shot. I'm not sure what order I'll read his broader material, his back catalog, so to speak, but I definitely want to tackle Crime and Punishment before I tackle something like, say, Brothers Karamazov, because this one's apparently a little bit easier, it's a little bit more straightforward, it's less dense, so to speak, and it's a lot shorter. This one's like 500 pages in this version as opposed to the like 900 pages of the Brothers K. So, that's just the way things go sometimes. Next up is one that I've actually had on the back burner for a little while that I really need to prioritize a little bit soon, because I loved the Iliad and the Odyssey when I read those. I absolutely loved them. It's been over a year now since I read those, which is insane. That's really weird to think about. But the Aeneid by Virgil, that's who wrote it. This translation is by Robert Vagels. He's not the one who wrote it. I wanted to get to this one in November or December of 2022, so shortly after I originally read the Iliad and the Odyssey both. But then I just didn't end up having time for it, and I haven't made priority for it yet. But the people who have read it since, in the wake of those two books, decided that it was very good and worthy of being in the discussion with those two. And this one contains some of the events that people assume to be part of the Iliad and or the Odyssey, depending on what you think of. So things like the Trojan horse, I think, is apparently in this one. That might still be wrong, but I think that's what I've heard. Either way, the Aeneid is one that I definitely want to try, definitely want to get back into epic poetry, especially Greek poetry. I really, really loved Iliad and Odyssey, like I said, so I want to give this a shot sooner than later. I really need to make it a priority as soon as possible. Maybe not this year, unfortunately. But now we head into the top 5 of this list. Very excited to talk about all of these ones. This next one is another read-along that I did miss. Many of my most anticipated classics that I want to read are, in some sense, part of a read-along, part of monthly classics or something along those lines that I didn't actually have time to catch. This next one is The Three Musketeers by Alexandre Dumas, and yeah, it's long. It's like 700 pages, so there's a reason why I wasn't able to fit this back last September when I wanted to, when I was doing a heck of a lot of other reading for, like, especially Sun Eater stuff. I was doing a lot of Sun Eater material at that time, doing copy editing and proofreading stuff. It was a whole thing, so I didn't have time to fit this one in, but it is one that I really want to try. The Count of Monte Cristo was an incredible book, especially the first, 300 pages of that are just absolute perfection, and I really want to give this book a shot. I don't think I know very many people, if any, who would say that this is better than Count of Monte Cristo, but I think it looks really fun, and I do really want to try it nonetheless, especially since it's a little bit shorter, and I think Count of Monte Cristo might, it borders on too long. It's kind of heresy to say that. It's kind of heresy to suggest that, but I do think there's some valid argument to someone saying that. Number 4 on this list is one that I want to try solely because of loving the previous work that I read by the author. In fact, I actually mentioned this book earlier in the video, Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Next one is Notre Dame de Paris, which is, I think most people would know this as The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it's a lot shorter than Les Mis, thank goodness, because Les Mis was an absolute behemoth, but this one is still about 500 pages. This is easily my most anticipated French classic, all things considered, after Les Mis was an all-time read for me. Like, it's one of my top 3, top 2, maybe even number 1 book of all time. It's like tied for number 1 at this point, as far as I'm concerned. So I really want to try this. As far as I know, the people who have read Les Mis and really enjoyed it, who also read this, also really enjoyed it, so I don't see any particular reason why I wouldn't love this one, but I am very excited to get to it at some point. And now we get to the top 3, and I mentioned a great poem just before this, earlier on the list at number 6. That was, of course, the Aeneid by Virgil. This time we're heading into Italian territory with The Divine Comedy, another epic poem by Dante Alighieri. That's gonna probably be my best attempt at that last name. I'm sorry I butchered it. I'm sure I did. But this is made up of 3 parts: the Inferno, the Purgatorio, and the Paradiso. These are 3 books about, a sort of, they're not autobiographical, but, a sort of, semi-satirical take of the journey through hell and purgatory and heaven. and the way that Dante realized all of that. I have read the Inferno technically in the past. I don't remember basically anything about it. And if there's one thing that I regret about this translation, is that the translation that I have here is actually one that rhymes, so it's not the best in the world. I would have preferred one that didn't rhyme, but every time I tried to find a copy of this with a translation that didn't actually rhyme, they were in very poor copies that I would not want to read from. And this one also has a lot of notes as well, so I think if nothing else, this will be a good entry point, and then I can go back and try to find what that original translation was that I was reading, because I really enjoyed that. But this is one that I definitely want to give another shot and like read all the way through and really think deeply about, because I think a lot of the material that someone could get out of this is immense. It's a favorite of many a person that I know. As for number 2 on this list, is one that has been on this list for so long. It's been since maybe July of 2022 or something like that, so it's been well over a year and a half since I missed this part of the read along. On the monthly classics, there was a point in that summer 2022 where a month Picture of Dorian Gray got voted, but then people were like, okay, can we have another book because it's so short? I was not happy with the decision to add another book onto that list, but that second book was A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, moving right back into English territory with this one. This is one that's just been on my list for forever since I missed that read along. I don't know why I want to get to this one so bad, probably because it was the first classic that I missed, so it just feels really high priority in my mind for whatever reason, but it is one that I want to try, and I do think it's the Dickens that I want to try first, even though it is widely regarded as being a little bit different for him. And I say that even though I have actually read Christmas Carol and some other Christmas writings in that collection that I have, but this is the first like full novel that I want to try, even despite it being a little bit different. The concept sounds good. I didn't have a bad experience reading Christmas Carol. In fact, Christmas Carol is fantastic. So if this channels even a little bit of what I enjoyed in that, not necessarily in like the content sphere, but like in the writing or the evocative, imagery and all that kind of stuff, I do really want to get back to this one. Plus, several of the friends who read it really liked it. I think Reen, for example, it's one of his favorites, or at least definitely one of his favorites of that year. So I do want to go back and catch up on this one as soon as I can. No idea when. I have an idea of how I'm going to do it, but I thought I was going to try to do it this year, but I think it might not be till next year, so that's unfortunate. But 'tis the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. As for number 1, this was originally going to be a cheating inclusion because I thought I was going to have started it by now. In fact, there was a little bit of me that thought I would have had it finished by now if I actually read it in January, like I kind of wanted to. East of Eden by John Steinbeck, one of my most anticipated reads just in general. I don't know why I'm so excited to read this one, but I am. I just really want to get to it, and it's one that I really want to get to this year. Like I said, I wanted to read this in January. It did not quite end up happening, and then it kind of bled over into February. It's like, okay, now I'm going to read this in February. Now I'm looking at my schedule and I'm like, I don't know if I'll have the ability to start. There's a secret reading project that I have this month that I haven't actually gotten yet, so I can't start on that yet, but like it really depends on what the timeline with that is. If I get that as early as I hope I'm able to, then I should still be able to get through at least a decent chunk of East of Eden before March. If I don't get that secret reading project for a little while, I'm just going to be kind of, hum-hawing my way through a few other stuff before getting to that, in which case this book will then be pushed into even later this year. I feel like East of Eden deserves my full attention in a way that I don't think I'll be able to do this month, which is unfortunate to say, but I did decide that I wanted to read it early this year. I hope I can still get that done, depending on what some of my other reading looks like over the next couple months, which is admittedly a little bit packed, unfortunate for me. I do really want to get to it this year. If I don't get to it before I start Infinite Jest this spring or summer, I definitely want to get this at least in the last quarter of the year, so in October, November, December, something like that. If I don't get to this earlier, then I'll definitely have it for later in the year, and I'm not going to miss it this time. But there you go. That was the 10 classics I most want to read, or at least 10 of the classics that I most want to read. Let me know in the comments below what of these you're looking forward to, if you've read them before, if you want to see my thoughts, or if you haven't read them, what ones on here you would most want to read, or what some other classics that you most want to read. could be. And you know, don't worry about the distinguishment of classics, because there's, you know, a wide range of stuff that could be considered classic, and there's a lot of stuff that some people consider classics that kind of maybe aren't. But classics isn't a genre, so basically just give me any of the older books, you know, like pre-1965 or whatever arbitrary year somebody could come up with. What are some of the older books that you are interested in reading? Let me know. I'll be back on Sunday with another Short Story Sundays video. I forget which one is coming out then off the top of my head, but next Tuesday I'll be back with a review for The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan, finally reviewing that book a couple months after I finished it. So I'm excited for that one. I hope to see you in the next video.